So earlier I put out a video on teams that could destroy your bracket this March Madness, and I thought it would be interesting if I created my own March Madness upset bracket where I go through the bracket and predict all of the different upsets that I think can actually happen in this NCAA tournament. But before we jump into the bracket, I wanted to mention that this video is sponsored by Kalshi, and Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the US, and with Kalshi you can trade against your peers rather than a sportsbook all tournament long, and it's available in all 50 states. And Kalshi just announced their $1 billion perfect bracket contest, and it's free to enter. So if you are somehow able to predict all 63 games of the tournament correctly, you could win. But if not, Kalshi is still giving away $1 million to the top scoring bracket, so make sure to go and submit your bracket on Kalshi's app or website. But if you're interested in signing up for Kalshi before the madness begins, make sure to use code TBN to get $10 when you trade your first $10. But now, let's jump into the bracket. All right, so we are back on ESPN, and as I mentioned in the intro, this is going to be my upset bracket. So in each one of these games, if I think an upset can happen, I am going to be predicting it. So we'll start out in the East region where Duke is our #1 overall seed. And obviously in this one, 1 versus 16, I don't think that's going to happen. Duke just has too much firepower, and I don't think Siena can keep up with them. Then we have Ohio State taking on TCU. Technically, TCU is the higher seed in this one as the 9 seed going up against Ohio State in the 8 seed. Ohio State has Bruce Thornton, John Mobley, Devin Royal, and a bunch of other guys that I think would be really good. But even in my main bracket, I'm picking Jamie Dixon and the TCU Horned Frogs, so I'm going to be picking them here. I think David Punch is a really underrated player that not a lot of people know, and he would have a great game in this one against Ohio State, so I like the Horned Frogs. Then we have St. John's going up against Northern Iowa, and I think Northern Iowa is a sneaky upset pick against St. John's. I know the Johnnies are just now coming off of a Big East championship where they absolutely dominated the entire tournament, and especially against UConn in that championship game. But this is a Northern Iowa team that's really good on the defensive end, and I think against a team like St. John's that doesn't shoot the 3 ball that well, they could really muck it up and make it a very physical game with the Johnnies. And although I think St. John's would respond well to that physicality, there is a possibility where St. John's just doesn't have the best offensive game, and I think Northern Iowa would be able to overcome it. Also, they have a guy by the name of Trey Campbell you need to know. I think he could have a really big March, and if they're going to get the upset in this one, he's going to be a big part of it. So I'm going with Northern Iowa in this one. Then we have Kansas taking on Cal Baptist. If you didn't watch Cal Baptist win in their conference tournament, it was absolutely insane how that ending came about. Dominique Daniels, another name that you need to know there for the Lancers. He's a smaller guard, but he is absolutely lethal from beyond the arc and a big part of what that team does. Averages over 20 points per game, and just like Trey Campbell for Northern Iowa, if the Lancers are going to beat Kansas, it's going to be Dominique Daniels. And we've seen Kansas get upset before, especially with how this lineup right now, at times they just don't feel as confident together. I think it really had a big part with Darren Peterson being in and out of the lineup, so there just wasn't a lot of continuity throughout the entire season with it. So I do think Cal Baptist could get an upset here, but obviously I'm not predicting that in my main one. Then we're moving to the 6 versus 11 game where we see Louisville taking on South Florida, and I have South Florida winning in my main bracket, so obviously I'm going to have them here. Wes Enos, Joseph Pinion, 2 amazing shooters for the Bulls, and then obviously you have the American Player of the Year and Isaiah Nelson down low. I think this team likes to run fast. They shoot a lot of threes, one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country, and one of the best just rebounding teams in general in the country. I think against a Louisville team that we don't know if Michael Brown Jr. is going to play yet, I think that South Florida has a really good shot at winning that one. They've been dominating the American all season long, and they're hot coming into the NCAA tournament, so I like the Bulls in that one. And right now, Kalshi traders have South Florida at a 34% chance to win their first matchup against Louisville, and you could win $70 on just a $25 trade with those odds, and this is by far my favorite 11/6 pick of the tournament. Then we have Michigan State going up against North Dakota State, and I have seen a few people predict that North Dakota State could win this one. I guess if you thought that Michigan State's offense just wasn't very good in this matchup and where North Dakota State could take advantage of that, but I actually just don't see this happening. I think Michigan State has been extremely solid all season long, probably the second best team in the Big Ten for the majority of the season, obviously until Purdue went on to win the Big Ten championship. And so I trust Tom Izzo. I don't think this one is going to happen, so I'm going to stick with the Spartans here. Then we have UCLA going up against UCF. UCLA was my pick in my main bracket. I like the way that Donovan Dent has been playing, Tyler Bilodeau, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark. A lot of really good pieces there for Mick Cronin and the Bruins. But UCF has Themis Folks. They have Riley Cool. They can get hot from three. And if Johnny Dawkins' squad gets it going on the offensive end, they definitely can win this game. So I'm going with the Golden Knights in this one. And then we have UConn going up against Furman. I do think if any 15 seed is going to win, it's going to be Furman. I believe they're better than a normal 15 seed. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but Alex Wilkins and Cooper Bowser are two names you need to know for Furman, because if they somehow get this win, it's going to be mainly because of those two. Alex Wilkins, a really dynamic guard there for Furman, and then you got Cooper Bowser, and if he gets to his post hook, good luck stopping it. I actually think with UConn not having the best front court, there is a chance that this could happen. So I am going to be picking Furman with the upset. That's probably going to be my only 2 versus 15. But right now, UConn doesn't have the best depth on defense. We have seen that there are some vulnerabilities there, and Furman might be able to take advantage of it. So I have Furman advancing in this upset bracket. Moving down to the South region in the round of 64, we got Florida going up against Prairie View A&M or Lehigh, and no surprise here, I'm going with Florida. I don't think any 16 seeds are going to be the 1 seeds realistically in this one, so I have the Gators advancing. Then we have Iowa going up against Clemson. Iowa, coached by Ben McCollum. You have a guy in Bennett Certs on your roster, and anytime you have Bennett Certs, who is going to be an NBA draft pick this summer, you have a chance to win in March Madness. So I got the Hawkeyes advancing in this one. Then we got Vanderbilt going up against McNeese. McNeese was one of the teams that I was eyeing as a potential upset pick in this one, but Vanderbilt right now just feels a little too hot. I know they're coming off of the loss in the SEC Championship to Arkansas, but I actually am not that confident in this 12/5, so I'm sticking with Vanderbilt in this one. Then we have Nebraska going up against Troy. Nebraska never won an NCAA tournament game before. I think they do it this year, but there is definitely a possibility that this Troy team gets the win. Victor Valdez is a big point forward for the Troy Trojans, and he is someone that would have a big game if they were able to beat Nebraska. I think Troy absolutely dominated the Sun Belt all season long, and this is a really good 13 seed, and so I'm going to be picking Troy with the upset over Nebraska. And Kalshi's market on Troy to win in the first round over Nebraska might be one of my favorites, as they currently have a 12% chance according to traders, because the Cornhuskers have never won an NCAA tournament game, and if that streak continues, a $50 trade would turn into almost $400. Then we have North Carolina going up against VCU, and this is one of my favorite upset picks of the tournament, and I'm going with the VCU Rams. They're playing like one of the hottest teams in the country right now, and obviously we know with North Carolina, no Caleb Wilson, going to be out for the entirety of the tournament. If they can shut down Henry Vasar, maybe even get him in foul trouble, I like VCU's guards more than what North Carolina has, so I have the Rams advancing in this one. Then we got Illinois taking on Penn. Penn, coached by former Iowa coach Fran McCaffrey. They have a former high major player in TJ Power on their roster, and he went absolutely lethal in their game against Yale in the Ivy League Championship and led them into overtime, and then obviously to the win where they got the 14th seed in the NCAA tournament. Going up against Illinois, though, which this team, we know how good of an offense it is, but obviously on the defensive end, there definitely is some vulnerabilities. And because of that, and with TJ Power and what we saw and how he can go for 40 points if he needs to, I think there's potential upset. So I'm going with Penn to get the win in this one. Then St. Mary's going up against Texas A&M. St. Mary's, I do think, is disciplined enough to handle buckyball, but there is a real scenario where Bucky McMillan and the Aggies just bring too much pressure and it causes chaos, and St. Mary's is not able to keep up with it. So I got Texas A&M advancing. And then Houston going up against Idaho. I think Idaho is really intriguing, but Houston, too much for the Vandals. They get the win and advance. Now, jumping back to the top of the round of 64, over on the right side, we have the West region where Arizona is our 1 seed, and they're going up against Long Island. And obviously, I got Arizona in this one. Fins up, really cool story, but not an upset in this year's March Madness. Then we got Villanova going up against Utah State. Villanova can be inconsistent at times. Utah State has a guy in Mason Falslev that I think could have a really big March Madness, and obviously if they're going to get some wins in it, he's going to be a big part of it. So I got the Aggies advancing in this one. Then we have Wisconsin going up against High Point. Wisconsin, Nick Boyd, John Blackwell in the backcourt. Really great guards who I think this would be a really tough out for High Point. But High Point is a really trendy upset pick right now. This team has become one of the best mid-majors year after year in the tournament for the second year in a row, and they have some high major talent on their team that has now transferred down to the mid-major level. I think High Point's activity on the defensive side of things and their ability to get out in transition could hurt Wisconsin at times, and if the game script is right, the Panthers can win. So I got High Point advancing in this one. High Point is another team that I'm eyeing on Kalshi, as traders give them a 20% chance to win over Wisconsin, and with the way they have been playing, I think they have a better shot than most think to win this game, and you could make almost $50 on just a $10 trade. Then we got Arkansas taking on Hawaii. Hawaii was another team that I was eyeing as a potential upset pick, but Arkansas has Darius Acuff. I just cannot see this Arkansas team losing in the first round, so I'm going with the Razorbacks in this one. Then we got BYU going up against Texas or NC State. And obviously in this 6-11 matchup, an 11 seed can definitely beat a BYU team that no longer has Richie Saunders. If they're able to shut down AJ DeBanza and Robert Wright, there's definitely a shot of it. So give me Texas or NC State to get the win there. Then we have Gonzaga going up against Kennesaw State. Gonzaga, the WCC tournament really showed me something. I was nervous about the Zags before that, especially after they took that loss at St. Mary's. But the way that they were able to handle the WCC tournament and beat Santa Clara there in the championship game, and the way Mario St. Superi is playing right now, and especially if they get Brayton Huff back, the Zags aren't losing this one. So I got Gonzaga winning. Then Miami going up against Missouri. Miami is a really big team in the front court. Malik Renew, Ernest Uday. Missouri has a 7-footer there in the center spot. And then you also have a guy in Mark Mitchell. T.O. Barrett on the guard spot is really good for the Tigers as well. And then you also have Anthony Robinson. I think Missouri has a lot of weapons. They have a really good win over Florida this season. And if you can beat a team like Florida, you could beat a team like Miami. So I got Missouri winning this one and advancing. And then Purdue going up against Queens. Purdue coming off a high of winning the Big Ten tournament. I know they've lost in the first round before, but they're not losing in the first round in this one. Give me Purdue to win and advance to the round of 32. Then jumping down to the Midwest region for our last bit of the round of 64, Michigan going up against UMBC or Howard. Doesn't matter which one comes out of it. Michigan is not losing in the first round. Too dominant, and these small schools are not going to be able to keep up with what Michigan has in the front court. Then we got Georgia and St. Louis. Georgia, we know what their offense is. They live and die by the three, but they're going up against a St. Louis team that is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, shoots over 40% from deep. So Josh Schertz and the Billikens get the win here. Texas Tech and Akron. This is another one of the picks where I really like Akron here. Texas Tech, no JT Toppin. Christian Anderson coming off an injury. Akron winning the MAC. Honestly, having one of the most dominant seasons in the MAC, besides the fact that Miami, Ohio went undefeated in the regular season. They only took one loss, and it was by only a few points on the road at Miami, Ohio. But Akron has Amani Lyles. They got Tavari Johnson. You got Ashama Scott, who hit that big three-pointer to win the MAC tournament. This Akron team can definitely win and beat Texas Tech. Then Alabama going up against Hofstra. Alabama having some big news here recently right before the tournament. Aiden Holloway, we don't know what's going to happen with him, but this Hofstra team, Speedy Claxton, what a great story that they're on right now, and they're actually one of my sleepers to get an upset against Alabama. The volatility of Alabama's offense, if they're not hitting the three, we know they're not great on the defensive end. There is a real scenario where even with Aiden Holloway, Hofstra picks up this upset. So I got Hofstra winning and advancing in this one. And with the recent news around Alabama, Hofstra has become one of my dark horse upset picks in the first round over the Crimson Tide. And right now they have just a 15% chance to win on Kalshi, and a trade of just $8 there would pay out $50 if that upset happens. Then Tennessee going up against either Miami, Ohio or SMU. In that 11 game of Miami, Ohio or SMU, I would say the upset pick is Miami, Ohio. SMU definitely is favored right now. And then Miami, Ohio would be going up against Tennessee. And for a team that went 31-1, I think they could beat Tennessee if Tennessee isn't having the best offensive game. We know at times Tennessee's offense can disappear. They're great on the defensive end, but Miami, Ohio truly has one of the best offenses in the country, very efficient on that side of the ball. So I'm going with the Red Hawks to get the win in the 11-6 matchup and advance from the first 4 to the round of 32. Then we have Virginia and Wright State. Virginia looking like one of the most solid teams in the country right now. An amazing season for Ryan Odom in his first year with the Cavaliers. I don't think Wright State's going to be able to get the upset, so I'm going with Virginia. Then Kentucky and Santa Clara. I picked Kentucky originally, but this was a 50-50 game for me and when I first made the bracket. And the more I think of it, the more I actually like Santa Clara in this matchup. They have a lot of talent. Alan Graves is a guy that's an NBA draft prospect. You also have Elijah Mahi on the wing. They have really good shooters in the backcourt, good positional size. I think the Broncos might be my pick on my official bracket, so I got Santa Clara advancing. And then Iowa State going up against Tennessee State. Tennessee State, really cool story with Nolan Smith, the former Duke Blue Devil, now the head coach for Tennessee State, but Iowa State a bit too much, and they advance to the round of 32. Moving back up to the East region where we start off our round of 32 picks, and first up, we have Duke going up against TCU, and this is one that I'm going back and forth on whether or not I truly believe it can happen. This Duke team has been extremely dominant all season long, has looked like one of the best teams in college basketball, coming in as the #1 overall seed. I don't think I can see it happening, so I'm going with Duke to get the win and advance to the Sweet 16. Then we got Northern Iowa going up against Cal Baptist, and Dominique Daniels is a guy that can carry this Cal Baptist team to a win, especially over Northern Iowa. So I am going with the Lancers to get the win and advance to the second weekend of the tournament. Then we have South Florida and Michigan State. In South Florida, I wouldn't even be surprised if they advance to the Sweet 16, not in an upset bracket. So I have to be going with the Bulls. This team playing extremely well right now. They have high major talent and high major athleticism on the roster, and I think they can keep up with a team like Michigan State. And honestly, on the offensive end, it might be Michigan State that's having to try and keep up with them. So I'm going with the Bulls to get the win. And then UCF going up against Furman. Furman obviously got the win over UConn in the first round. Now they're going up against the Golden Knights. If they can get the win over UConn, they can get the win over UCF. So give me Furman advancing to the Sweet 16. Then moving down to the South region in our round of 32, we got Florida going up against Iowa. This is one I've gone back and forth, but honestly, Iowa in the Big Ten, when they played some of the top competition, they don't play well, so I'm still picking Florida to advance in this one. And then Vanderbilt going up against Troy. I think it's the same as I felt with Vanderbilt going up against McNeese. Vandy playing way too good right now. Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles, an extremely underrated backcourt there for the Commodores. I think they have really good players on the wing and in the front court as well. So I'm going with Vandy to get the win. And then VCU and Penn. I know I picked Penn to beat Illinois, but I don't know if they could win 2 games in a row in the tournament. So I'm going to be sticking with VCU. I also like the defense for the Rams a lot more than what Illinois has. I think they have some defensive stoppers, especially in the backcourt and on the wing, that could shut down a TJ Power. So I'm going with VCU and the Rams to advance to the second weekend. And then Houston going up against Texas A&M. I do not think that Texas A&M can beat Houston. Doesn't matter where it's played, Houston is getting the win in this one. Kelvin Sampson's squad has too much talent, and they're too well coached to let buckyball affect them too much. So give me Houston to win and advance in this one. Then jumping back up to the West region, where we see Arizona going up against Utah State in our first matchup of the round of 32 in this region. And it's going to be Arizona getting the win. I believe their front court is just way too big for the Aggies and is going to give them a lot of problems. A guy like Mason Falslev may be able to go off, but I think there's other guys on the other side for the Wildcats that can definitely go off as well and just limit his impact. So I still have the Wildcats advancing. Then High Point going up against Arkansas. I believe this is where the Panthers' run comes to the end. Arkansas playing way too well right now. SEC champions Darius Acuff. Trevin Brazil is another piece that I think is going to be a really big X factor for this Razorbacks team. Also, DJ Wagner, how he plays coming off the bench as the backup guard to Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. This Razorbacks team doesn't have a lot of depth, but I definitely think they still have the pieces, and they're going to be getting to the second weekend. Then Texas or NC State going up against Gonzaga, and this Zags team is definitely susceptible. At times, the offense can disappear, and we have seen teams like Michigan absolutely dominate them. I don't think Texas or NC State is anywhere near the caliber of the Wolverines, but I do think they have the ability to beat Gonzaga, and so I'm going with them advancing to the next round. And then Purdue going up against Missouri. I actually don't think Missouri is going to be able to get the win over Purdue. What they showed in the Big Ten tournament has me thinking that this Boilermakers team is trending in the right direction at the perfect time. You'd have the best guard in the game in Braden Smith. I believe the front court of Purdue with Trey Coffin-Wren and Oscar Clough. Also, Daniel Jacobson, who had some big moments in the Big Ten tournament. They would just be too much for the Missouri Tigers, so the Boilermakers advance. Then moving down to our last region for the round of 32, we have the Midwest region, where in our first matchup, it's Michigan going up against St. Louis. And this is one I am going back and forth on. I think St. Louis, they have really good pieces, and earlier on in the season, I definitely would have said St. Louis has the ability to knock off Michigan, but with their recent play, how they lost to Rhode Island on the road and then Dayton twice, both at the end of the regular season and in the A10 tournament, I'm not so sure, so I'm still have the Wolverines getting the win and advancing to the Sweet 16. Then Akron and Hofstra. I just really like this Akron team. Maybe Hofstra is able to get the win, but I'm not 100% sure. I think Akron right now, obviously looking like the best team in the MAC because they just won the MAC tournament, but I do believe that they have a lot of different weapons on this team. The backcourt of Hofstra, really great, but Akron has a really good backcourt of their own, and I think the front court might be a little better there for Akron with Amani Lyles. So give me the Zips to advance to the Sweet 16. Then we have Miami, Ohio going up against Virginia, and this is where the run comes to the end. Virginia, I believe, has been playing way too consistent as of late. Took Duke to the absolute brink there at the end. Thought they might have a chance to win the ACC championship, and they did, but they weren't able to hold on. So I got Virginia. And then we have Santa Clara going up against Iowa State. This Santa Clara team has some high major talent on it, but they weren't able to pick up one of their wins against Gonzaga. And if they aren't going to be able to do that, I'm not 100% sure they're going to be able to stop Iowa State. Also, the defense that Iowa State brings would probably be the best that Santa Clara has faced all season long. So I'm going with Iowa State. Don't necessarily think there's an upset there. So give me the Cyclones to advance to the Sweet 16. Moving back to the East region in our Sweet 16 matchup, we have Duke taking on Cal Baptist, and the Lancers, they're not going to be able to get this one. Duke just too dominant, still able to get to the Elite Eight in this matchup. Cameron Boozer, no one to stop him from Cal Baptist. The front court of Duke, with or without Patrick Ngongba, I think would be able to feast in this matchup. And then the guard play is going to be good enough to get past him. And then obviously you have a guy like Isaiah Evans who can just absolutely fill it up from deep. Then we got South Florida going up against Furman, and I think this is where I'm going to have Furman's run coming to the end. I truly believe in South Florida, and so I have the Bulls advancing to the Elite Eight in this one. Then jumping down to the South, where we have Florida going up against Vanderbilt, and we saw Vanderbilt beat Florida before. We can see them do it again. Vanderbilt once again knocks off Florida, who they just beat in the SEC semifinals, to advance to the Elite Eight. And then we have Houston going up against VCU, and I feel like VCU is almost the mid-major version of Houston, so I believe this would be a really fun matchup to see. They got a guy like Terrence Hill Jr., Brandon Jennings there in the backcourt, and then Lazar Djokovic in the front court, so they do have good positional size as well, and then obviously the ability to shoot it from deep with Terrence Hill Jr. I think VCU has a shot. Houston is not the same team that I once thought they were earlier in the season. I believe there's been some holes throughout that we've seen, especially in the front court. Or if guys like Kingston Flemings, Emmanuel Sharp, and Milos Uzan don't have the best games, there is a potential for an upset here. So I'm going with the Rams. They're advancing to the Elite Eight. Then jumping up to the West region for our Sweet 16 picks, we got Arizona and Arkansas. And I picked this in my main bracket. I think Arkansas, with how hot they've been right now, they have the ability to beat Arizona. Their front court is good enough to stay with what they do from Arizona with Mo Krivas, Koa Pete, and Toby Awaka. I think Trevin Brazile, Nick Pringle, and Malik Ewan, they can match up with them. And then in the backcourt, when you have a guard like Darius Acuff, he is made for big moments, and he has shown that time and time again this season. And they have a chance to get the win over the Wildcats. I truly believe that. So give me Arkansas to advance to the Elite Eight. And then we got Texas or NC State going up against Purdue. And I think this is where that run is coming to the end. I'm still having Purdue getting to the Elite Eight. I truly believe the way this team has been playing that they are destined to get there this year. So give me the Boilermakers to advance. And then down below, Michigan going up against Akron. I don't believe Akron has the front court that can stick with Michigan. Amani Lyles is great, but the sheer size that the Wolverines bring with Ade Mara, Merez Johnson Jr., and Jax Lindenborg will just be too much for the Akron Zips. So I got the Wolverines winning in that one. And then Virginia going up against Iowa State. Virginia can win this game. They have the bigs to stay with Joshua Jefferson and Blake Buchanan. They have the guard play that can stay with Taman Lipsey and Dallin Hall and Chance Mallory. And they got the wing depth that can stay with Milan Momcilovic and Jakari White, Malik Thomas. So I like Virginia in this matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. And moving on to the Elite Eight, where we see Duke taking on South Florida. And like I've mentioned, this South Florida team has high major talent. And so I'm going to be picking the Bulls. I think it's a long shot, and I think it'd be really hard. But the guard play and the shooting that they bring with guys like Wes Enos and Joseph Pinion, then they have some really good defenders there on the wing as well. And then Isaiah Nelson, I think the battle between him and Cam Boozer, and if a guy like Patrick Ngungba and Caleb Foster are not available for the Blue Devils, I think South Florida, it's a long shot, but they have a chance to pull off the upset. So give me the Bulls advancing to the Final Four. Then for the South region, we got Vanderbilt going up against VCU, and I think I'm picking the Rams as well. This team has the ability to beat a team like Vanderbilt. They got the shooting. They have the elite guard play from Terrence Hill Jr. They got a good enough front court, and I don't think Vanderbilt's front court would punish them. And VCU, coming off of an A-10 championship, has the ability to get hot and make it to a Final Four. Then in the West region, we have Arkansas going up against Purdue, and I'm going with the Razorbacks. If you can beat the Arizona Wildcats, you can beat the Purdue Boilermakers. This Arkansas team has been playing their best basketball as of late. They've shown the ability to score when they need to and get stops when they need to as well. Give me John Calipari to advance to the Final Four with the Arkansas Razorbacks. And then there in the Midwest region, we have Michigan going up against Virginia. Virginia almost got the win over Duke in the ACC championship, but here they get the win over Michigan. So I got Ryan Odom and the Cavaliers advancing to the Final Four. So jumping over to our Final Four, we got South Florida taking on VCU on one side of the bracket, and then Arkansas taking on Virginia. And if this matchup were to happen, I believe the favorite would actually be VCU, but my pick is going to be South Florida. They have just shown the ability in the way that they've been playing as of late, especially in the year 2026. It's been awesome to see. This team has so much talent. They can do a lot of different things. They can defend when they need to. One of the best rebounding teams in the country. And then obviously that offense can get out and go. Give me the South Florida Bulls to beat the Rams and advance to the national championship game, where they're going up against either Arkansas or Virginia. And Arkansas, technically the underseeded team. So I have the Razorbacks getting the upset. They have the better guard play in this matchup with Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. And they might have just as good front court play as Virginia. I know the Cavaliers have a Tice DeRitter, Johan Grunlow, and Onyensu, but a Trevin Brazile, again, believe he's an X factor. The way he played in that SEC championship game really showed just how high his ceiling is. And then Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle are serviceable there for the bigs. And I haven't even mentioned a guy like Billy Richmond out on the wing. He does so much for this team, can defend just about everyone, and that offensive game is continuing to evolve. Give me Arkansas to advance to play South Florida in the national championship. So obviously, if this game was happening and we weren't picking an upset bracket, I would be picking the Razorbacks. But I feel like with what I've had South Florida do so far in this bracket and the different teams that I've had them beat, I have to have them beating Arkansas and winning it all. I truly just believe that this South Florida team is destined at least to get that first round upset. But this team, if they made a Sweet 16, I wouldn't be surprised. And if they made an Elite 8, I believe I've seen crazier things happen. So I got the Bulls winning it all in my official 2026 March Madness upset bracket. But that wraps it up for this video. Let me know your thoughts on my upset picks in the comments down below. And who do you have as the biggest upset in your bracket this March Madness? Also, make sure to join my March Madness bracket challenge, and the link is in the description. And if you enjoy the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.